Good evening. It is Dan Kerr's DK Analytics. Thanks a lot for tuning in. It is September 6th, Sunday evening. I'm putting out a video. The topic is This Isn't Being Priced In. Before I get into the story, let me revert to some valuation metrics. That is as of the Friday close. US dollar, the Dixie, the dollar stood at 92.97. The Fed's balance sheet again crossed the $7 trillion mark, inching up a bit. The US 10-year yielded 0.72%. The S&P at a nosebleed 34.27. Oil at $39.77 per blue barrel. Gold stood at $1,934 per troy ounce, and silver at $26.79 per troy ounce. Bonds continued to be priced for solvency, inflation, and political perfection. Meanwhile, the S&P is trading for a whopping 35 times trailing 12-month earnings per share in what will likely be a sustained and material EPS downdraft environment. And last but not least, precious metals are still correcting a bit from recent highs. What is being priced into bonds and stocks? Well, how about the Fed and other central banks to the QE rescue? That's what's being priced in. I won't repeat all the money printing statistics. I've shared those numerous times. Yet I will observe that the US M1 money supply has soared by 40% year over year as the massive monetary base bloat begins to reach the US money supply amidst rising inflationary expectations and rising inflation. What isn't being priced in to US stocks and bonds, then? Economic and political/societal dimensions. That's what. Let me start with the economic side of things for flavor. Continued US unemployment claims just soared by 2.2 million to 29.2 million, the worst reading since August 1st. Initial jobless claims jumped to 1.59 million, and a whopping 18.3% of the US labor force is on unemployment insurance some 24 weeks into the devastating coronavirus policy response. Non-recovering, L-shaped US labor force being employment plus unemployed people, the L-shaped US labor force numbers suggest a protracted economic collapse, not a recovery. To add insult to injury, 4.8 million unemployed people are missing from the aggregate labor force tally, this according to John Williams of ShadowStats. Meanwhile, revised second quarter GDP, US GDP, and initial US gross domestic income reporting confirmed the record Q2 collapse, wiping out 5 years of economic growth and in the process resetting the inflation-adjusted real US GDP to its lowest level since 2014. Cities across America are burning as rioters, looters, anarchists, racists, and even murderers gain the upper hand, and police are told to stand down by their Democratic mayors and governors on the one hand, and as highly business restrictive coronavirus policy diktats imposed by Democratic officials continue on the other hand. With roughly 80% of America living in urban areas, this according to the U.S. Census Bureau, how can the U.S. economy recover, much less stabilize, when there is a war or a lockdown going on downtown, meaning businesses largely remain closed and big cities, led by New York City and Chicago and LA, are being depopulated at amazing clips as businesses and people flee. By the way, I'm going to place a link in the descriptive part of this video called Meet Joe Biden's Supporters, was shared by a friend. It is an ad by Donald Trump. I strongly suggest you take a look for more flavor. Let me move on to the political aspects. We continue to witness a rule of law and a law and order breakdown in the United States. However incredibly threatening those issues are, they may be pushed aside by overt governmental destabilization, led, of course, by the power-obsessed Marxist Democrats. The Alinskyeites, also known as Democrats, are busy at both ends of the political spectrum, namely via fueling a well-funded mobocracy of thugs on the one hand, and via a high-grade coup-seeking government rising in broad daylight on the other hand. Let me give you some flavor. How about a reflection of the current U.S. political scene via an internet comment that was sent to me the other day by a nearly lifelong friend? That comment: suffice it to say that this isn't a taffy pull. The left has decided to go full Tokyo Rose. The left knows Joe Biden is a loser, so they must press on as if he was never nominated. The drive by media will continue to create one media sidewalk shooting after another, and it doesn't matter to them how many businesses burn or how many innocent people are shot. To them, the left, every day under freedom is just another opportunity to create and draft a blueprint for a totalitarian nightmare. From a recent Washington Post editorial, get this: the election will likely spark violence and a constitutional crisis. In every scenario other than a Biden landslide, our simulation ended catastrophically. Or, if that is too conspiratorial for you, let's cut to the chase. Or better yet, let's go straight to the horses' mouths. The U.S. military brass has been quietly indicating that troops should not follow a presidential order. They were bolstered by many former generals, including President Trump's own first Secretary of Defense, who stated openly what the brass wouldn't hint at. Then, as nationwide riots really got rolling in early June, the sitting Secretary of Defense, Esper, all but publicly told the president not to invoke the Insurrection Act. His implicit message was, Mr. President, don't tell us to do that because we won't, and you know what happens after that. Or consider this: Joe Biden, the former United States Senator for 26 years and Vice President for 8, has confidently asserted 3 distinct times that the military will escort Trump from the White House with great dispatch should the president refuse to leave. Another former vice president, Al Gore, also chimed in publicly. In addition, over the summer, 2 former Army officers, both prominent in the Democrat-aligned national security think tank world, wrote an open letter to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs in which they urged him to deploy the 82nd Airborne Division to drag President Trump from the Oval Office at precisely 12:01 p.m. on January 20th, 2021. Finally, Hillary Clinton declared publicly that Joe Biden should not concede the election under any circumstances. Did anyone say a coming coup should Trump win re-election? And if Biden prevails, how will investors calibrate, valuation-wise, the following? Massively higher taxes, a massive enlargement of already Main Street/economy suffocating regulatory compliance costs, a deliberate evisceration of the very fossil fuels that make sales or output, interest payments to creditors, and leveraged profits possible. You've heard that 1 barrel of oil is the energy equivalent of 1 farm worker toiling in the fields for 11 years. How else will investors calibrate a Biden victory? How about unbridled third world amnesty with welfare benefits heaped on top? How about even more profound Black Lives Matter and Antifa anarchy and destruction, increasingly codified racism, including forcing white executives that likely got their jobs based on merit to admit that they have abused white privilege and that they need to confess it and repent or else be fired. Ask Kamala Harris if this isn't part of a Biden-Harris agenda. In other words, if Trump wins in a landslide that even massive mail-in voter fraud won't be able to negate, and congressional Republicans can get a federal mandate by taking back the House, then perhaps there is a chance to stop America's increasingly rapid Democratic Party-fueled descent into Jonestown. But even then, as we saw after the Mueller-Russia witch hunt concluded without a scintilla of evidence of wrongdoing by Trump or his administration, the Democrats won't accept the election results, just like they wouldn't accept the 2016 election results. The Democrats and their never-Trumper rhino pals, be they in the media, in the educational system, in Hollywood, in corporate America, in the bureaucracy, or in the elected branches of government, they will continue in their effort to smoke Trump out of the White House at any and all costs, including turning America into an even bigger, smoldering war zone. In closing, not very enticing economic or political prospects in America, regardless of who wins. Wouldn't you agree? Instead, Grand Canyon-sized problems. Yet, most bonds and many stocks are trading at or near all-time record valuations, at least in a historical sense. meaning even if bonds offer a bit higher yields than what they reached the ultimate lows of something like 0.3%, I believe, in the US, even at 0.7%, it is still unprecedented, historically speaking. So the question is, how long will the Fed's printing press be able to push aside those highly corrosive and disruptive issues, be they economic or political or societal, until inflation gets out of control, perhaps? Such a trajectory, our trajectory, has never ended well for investors or Main Street or for freedom. Yet, we have these blue sky valuations until we don't in bonds and stocks. Take the heroin the Fed and the other central banks of the world are using to prop up bonds and stocks as a gift, also known as manna from heaven, to realize gains and reallocate into essential assets and into real money. In other words, take this opportunity to get out of Dodge. But don't wait too long, because misplaced confidence in the central planning central bankers to manage everything can evaporate overnight, right? And that manna from heaven assurance will too, because the misplaced confidence will someday no longer be misplaced. It will just disappear. And so will valuations implode very fast. And you might not be able to get out without losing a large part of the bubble valuation you currently still enjoy. In short, this spring's stock market swoon was likely just an opening act that the Fed and other central banks will not be able to rescue forever. That's it from Bonita Springs, Florida this Sunday evening. I want to thank you very much for listening. I hope you got something out of this. Over and out, it's Dan Kurz of DK Analytics.